Greetings and welcome back to my channel for Storytime. This time we will be looking at the Salem witch trials. Again, the Salem witch trials. So first, I would like to share that this is going to be under fair use. And the Fair Act disclaimer under fair use under Section 107 states allowance is made for fair use of copyrighted material for purposes of commentary, criticism, news reporting, research, education, teaching, and or scholarship. It provides for the legal, non-licensed citation and or incorporation of copyrighted material by others, which might be infringing under other circumstances. And this may be applicable, so I will add it as well. Viewer discretion disclaimer. The following broadcast contains mature themes and situations and is intended for adults, even though you will see, due to the nature of the story, young people involved. However, this is intended for adults. Viewer discretion is advised. So, without further delay, let us get into a look at the Salem witch trials. Now, first off, I will share the screen just to look at a quick definition. Now, according to Merriam Webster, the definition and meaning of a witch is as follows. We'll be looking at the noun. In fiction and folk traditions, a person, especially a woman, and this is according to Merriam Webster, not Dwight's TV, but Merriam Webster, who is credited with having usually malignant supernatural powers. The modern visual image of the folklore witch, made popular by film representation of The Wicked Witch of the West and The Wizard of Oz, dated back to 1939, is an old hag with a hooked nose and a mole, wearing a pointed hat and flowing robes, flying on a broomstick. Once upon a time, the horror story was content to deal with things that go shriek in the night, with mad scientists, leering zombies, monsters, ghosts, witches, vampires, and damsels in distress. You can read that at your leisure. That's a brief definition of a witch, according to Merriam Webster. Now we're going to look into a brief history of the Salem witch trials. Again, this is fair use and viewer discretion is advised. Now, this excerpt is taken from the Smithsonian magazine, and it's going to be a brief history of the Salem witch trials. Now, many of you may have read this while you were in school. I know that I did. So we're going to take it back a little bit. And the title, A Brief History of the Salem Witch Trials, One Town's Strange Journey from Paranoia to Pardon. You can see the photo. And the Salem Witch Trials occurred in colonial Massachusetts between early 1692 and mid-1693. More than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, which was also known as the devil's magic, and according to the story from the Smithsonian, 20 were deleted. In 1711, colonial authorities pardoned some of the accused and compensated their families. But, and this is important here, if we look at the date, it was only in July of 2022, which was last year, that Elizabeth Johnson Jr., the last convicted Salem quote-unquote witch, whose name had yet to be cleared, was officially exonerated. Again, Elizabeth Johnson Jr., the last convicted Salem witch, whose name had yet to be cleared, was officially exonerated in July of 2022. We go down further. And it reads, since the 17th century, the story of the trials became synonymous with paranoia and injustice, fueled by xenophobia, religious extremism, and long-brewed social tensions. The witch hunt continues to beguile the popular imagination more than 300 years later. Under tensions of Salem, in the medieval and early modern eras, many religions, including Christianity, taught that the devil could give people, known as witches, the power to harm others in return for their loyalty. Now, my question is, that sounds, and this is just my opinion, a lot like what we hear when we hear the term sacrifice today as it relates to those in the entertainment industry. And I'll read that again. Many religions, including Christianity, taught that the devil could give people, known as witches, the power to harm others in return for their loyalty. So when you hear selling of one's soul, could that be a correlation to what transpired in Salem? As we continue, a witchcraft craze rippled through Europe from the 1300s to the end of the 1600s. Tens of thousands of supposed witches, mostly women, were deleted. Those Salem trials took place just as the European craze was winding down. Local circumstances explain their onset. In 1689, English monarchs William and Mary started a war with France in the American colonies known as King William's War to colonists. The conflict ravaged regions of upstate New York, Nova Scotia, and Quebec, sending refugees into the county of Essex and specifically Salem Village in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Salem Village is present-day Danvers, Massachusetts, colonial Salem town is what's now Salem. Again, you can find this on SmithsonianMag.com. Next, I will present a video, again, under fair use, copyright section 107. And this is entitled Witch Hunt in Salem, one of the darkest chapters of history, arguably, of the United States. And this is courtesy of YouTube, Real Documentary. Witch Hunt in Salem, one of the darkest chapters of history in the United States. And once it queues up, we'll go through a portion of this.
Sense amongst Puritans is simply, when bad things happen, like these things, they don't happen with no reason. There is always a reason why bad things happen.
Ultimately, everything that happened, your dog dies, your cow gets sick, your child is sick, your house burns down, you're suddenly in pain. All these things have to have some meaning connected to something much bigger than you, God, or possibly Satan.
Certain that they were sinful down to their very depths, each person had to be immensely strict with themselves, or so the Puritans believed. Salvation would only come to the pure, who took biblical doctrine as their guideline in life. To lead a diligent, simple, and morally pure life, that was the duty of
So this is just the beginning where it brings you into their beliefs and how many of this information is tied into the Bible. And they speak about how religion is being used and was used. So again, we'll go back, fair use. Again, this is taken from the Smithsonian.
service. It was religion that structured communal life. Joy and any sensory pleasure was considered satanic temptation.
So there's no absolution in the Puritan system and no system of confession. And what this does is to make it an internal process. It's inside you. This is what the minister is saying in his sermons. Look inside yourself, and you're going to find unrepented sin. That's the downside of the Puritan system. So much emphasis on sin, so much emphasis on understanding, looking inside yourself, but no real outlet for all the turmoil that creates, that causes.
Everybody had to answer personally and directly to God. They were left alone with whatever tormented them.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Repressed passions, anything ugly or dirty, came under the same injunction.
For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory,
forever and ever. Amen.
Had God forsaken Salem?
Now, as you can see, the question was, had God forsaken Salem? I'll ponder that. Well, I'll allow others to ponder as well. And you will hear the next presenter speaking about the embarrassment to the minister's household. Again, fair use.
Household to be attacked by witches, devils, whatever. I mean, you don't want to jump into that.
What does happen in my house whilst I am away?
I don't know.
Do not lie to me, child. Who is it that torments you?
I am no liar. The devil is the king of lies.
Then tell us who it is that is coming to you. Who is it that pinches you?
I don't know.
Now you can see the questions being asked of these young women. And they vehemently state they're unsure, but did state that the devil is full of lies, which many of us may have been brought up on. Let's continue. Again, this is fair use.
Evil people are. And it's very hard for us to determine that today. They're very real. Witches were real in 1692. They could harm people. Just like today, terrorists are very real, but we're never quite sure who they are. They could be anybody. You know, it could be a neighbor or a relative who's a witch or is a terrorist.
was the next speaker who spoke on, as you could just hear from his words, that in 1692, witches were real. And again, this is from his opinion, his thoughts, his assertions. I am not saying that this is true because obviously I was not around in 1692. But again, these are stories and accounts from others that I'm just presenting. And we will continue.
Outsider mutates just like that into the category of witch.
What people thought a witch was somebody who was acting purposefully with the devil.
But not only people on the margins of society can be suspect. Satan is abysmally evil, a clever and ingenious seducer who seeks to bring about the downfall of the pious. Could it be that his disciples have adopted as their disguise the semblance of great righteousness? That
So again, you hear more speaking about the powers or the beliefs of what the devil or Satan could do, and the fear that loomed the area. Let us continue.
Member of the church was accused of witchcraft.
And Rebecca Nurse is a full member of the Salem Town Church. She's got a good reputation. She has a very supportive family, but she's accused too.
There being complaint this day made against Rebecca Nurse, the wife of Francis Nurse of Salem Village, for vehement suspicion of sundry acts of witchcraft.
I never did no witchcraft in my life.
Having done much hurt and injury to the bodies of Ann Putnam and Abigail Williams, you are therefore, in their majesties' names, required to apprehend and bring before us Rebecca Nurse.
So you could see that she was being accused and she's claiming her innocence. Let us continue with the video. Again, this is fair use.
Rip the guts out of the witchcraft accusations.
The Salem episode was not carefully handled. And I have to say that procedurally, there were some things done which compromised the real sense of fairness and the sense of justice being carried on here. It became a form of entertainment.
Now, as you can hear by that presenter, that it became a form of entertainment, and there were things that could have been done that would have been more likely to have been just. But apparently, according to history that we've been taught, that wasn't the case as it relates to the trials of Salem. So let us continue with this video. And again, please take note of the correlations with giving your soul, selling your soul, back then and here today.
Was that if you were a witch and had given your soul to Satan, Satan would exchange to his newly converted witch a demon, a demonic being, in the form of what they called a familiar.
Today, if I go dressed as a witch for Halloween and I'm wearing a black pointy hat and I have a broom, I have a little cat with me, that popular culture representation of the black cat derives from the assumption of the spirit familiar that witches had.
And it would be the witch's job to sustain this familiar on their blood. And the place where the blood was drawn out of the witch's body was this so-called witch's mark.
So there's more history that I didn't know about as far as the witch's mark. If you have been acclimated to this, or you remember this from your studies, if indeed you studied this or read the books, as I mentioned earlier, that we did in school, if the witch's mark is familiar to you, because it's not to me. At least I don't remember it. So let us continue with the video. Fair use.
Thing people sometimes say is, well, if everybody who confessed got off, why didn't everybody just confess? Well, a couple of reasons. One, because lying was a mortal sin, and these people actually believed in mortal sin. Why would you live out your life with an assurance of hell after your life was over? And two, because up until this point, there was no guarantee at the beginning of the trial that confession would get you off.
So with that, the notion was, if you lied, it wouldn't help you anyway. And why risk telling a lie when you know what the circumstances would bring you? So let us continue with the remainder of the video.
Is the people, when they finally discovered what had happened, and that innocent blood had been shed largely as a result of the influence of individuals who thought they were doing God's work, but in fact were causing more of a problem. There was a secularization of society. A new paradigm is set up in Massachusetts Bay Colony.
And this will be the last screen share, which will close out a brief history of the Salem witch trials and the notion of witches, witchcraft, the devil / Satan, and the Bible. Fair use.
Took place. You would wander through a town that had been through probably the greatest crisis any community could possibly have gone through.
It must have been a very terrible thing for Salem Village to deal with. And it clearly, we know it took years, if not decades, for them to heal from those trials, as the community had to really sort of deal with that aftermath where villager turned against villager in the trials.
So that is a brief history, a brief look at the Salem trials, the Salem witchcraft trials. Thank you for tuning in. If you have not already, please be sure to subscribe and like and share the video. Until next story time, thank you for tuning in, and please also be sure to leave any comments or thoughts you have on this video. Be safe, be well, and you know the rest. Be healthier.